All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Do More with Data Summit official halftime report. I hope you've had a great morning so far. I'm Damian Smiktala. I'm with Litmus. I head up our North American sales team. We have a great panel here with us for the next 15 minutes, and we're going to summarize and wrap up some of the, discuss some of the events this morning. And then we'll start with the AI portion of it at 12 or 1:15 Eastern. So let's go through our panel, do a quick round of introductions. Mark, would you want to say hello?
Thanks, Damian. Hi, everybody. Mark Thacker. I am the VP of Customer Success here. So really excited to be with people on this call.
Harry?
Hi, everybody. I'm Harry Grable. I lead partnerships here at Litmus. Glad to have everybody here. And looks like we're all having a lot of fun. So we look forward to recapping the first half of the day.
And last, but I don't think least, Dave?
Oh, I appreciate it, Damian. Thanks. Dave McMorrin, Director of Sales Engineering here at Litmus, and looking forward to the discussion. Thanks.
Amazing. Well, listen, I'd like to open up with thought here. And I think there were some like all the sessions were great. They all, built on the opening keynote. I think Jake has some great insight on people and the dynamics of the industry. And then we saw a whole bunch of insights in technology. I want to open up with a question for discussion in this panel because, in my role at Litmus, I used to be engineer. Now I work in the sales department. Mostly I talk to potential customers and customers about where to start and how they start. And this is a theme that I find in a lot of summits and webinars. People, and customers ask us, there's different approaches to starting. And we definitely touched on it in our last session with Mark. But I want to hear from the people on this panel, right? What do you guys think, based on what you heard today? What would you add in terms of your thoughts on discussion of where to start with Industry 4.0 and where to go?
Don't everybody jump in.
Well, I just did a webinar on that. If you want to rewind it, so I'll let Harry.
Excluding Mark.
Right. I think part of it is just, I heard a lot about, the death of the POCs or those pilots that just go nowhere. And I kept hearing this throughout for many of the seminars, which is have a business value. And I know we talk about that with customers is, don't go and try to just solve some technical, non-functional type of solution. Go solve a business problem, right? Actually do something that has value to it. So I think that's really is defining what that is and what what value that's going to bring and what ROI it's going to bring. I think that's really where to start, in my opinion, because everything else falls in under that.
I'll add to that. I mean, one thing we know in manufacturing, we're always going to have problems that we need to solve, right? And as humans and as decision makers, we tend to kind of gravitate towards solving one problem at a time. And we tend to pick systems that solve that problem for us, one problem at a time. And as a result of that, what we've seen is this whole complex industrial automation landscape that gets built over time. But I think the opportunity for Industry 4.0 or any sort of digital transformation strategies is to kind of think about that you're going to continually solve problems over time. So any systems that you pick, any software combinations that you pick, make sure that they're geared towards solving problems, not just today, but also in the future and going forward. And that can support technologies that are going to be built. So any sort of machine learning AI. We looked at we heard Jason Shern talked about generative AI from a Cognite's perspective. So just be mindful of that because systems can get complex. There's a lot of overhead. There's a lot of technical debt you can build while doing this. Just be a little mindful of the systems you're putting in and their long-term strategy for your company.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm going to throw an extra dimension in this because, I just had the discussion the other day of, we've seen our customers within Litmus start with two different approaches. We've seen people that just want to push all the data into the cloud and figure out later, right? Like the use case. We've seen people that start at the other end and they start with very specific use cases and do what it takes to enable those. And to me, those are just, both are fine, both are okay. They're just different trajectories to the same end goal, right? And so the important thing is that you have somewhat of a defined vision of where you want to go. and what are you trying to build at the end of the day? And I think, I'm going to be provocative here. I'm going to say we all talk about quick wins, and I'm going to say forget the quick win, because I think the quick win is an exercise of PR. I would say, as technologists, we're thinking about the technology, but the executive suite of the organization, they're thinking about return on capital. And so if I have a number of projects in front of me, quick wins are great, but what's the best win? Because the organization, needs to survive next year and the year after. And downtime today is obviously a problem, but really, what path do I take? Do I take with, do I start with something like Jason had? Do I start with a super advanced AI sort of, model to address a very important problem and build out the framework and infrastructure that's required to do that? Do I take a generalist approach, right? And start to put in all of the things in place to solve a multitude of use cases? Do I start with basic analytics at the edge, which is like, hey, what is my OEE, or something very advanced? And I think they're all valid approaches, but at the end of the day, it's where am I going to get the best return on my time, my capital? And that doesn't necessarily equate to the fastest return. Sometimes it does, but it may not.
Yeah, I think, Damien, I think part of that is you have to also choose things that generate enthusiasm with whoever you're touching, right? If they can see, it may not be an ROI, but it may be something that just makes their life easier. And so then you gain advocates, and that's how you keep those POCs from dying, and it's how you generate more and more value as well. So I think you're right. I don't think it's necessarily quick, but I think it's what's the value that you're getting, while at the same time creating enthusiasm to keep going and keep expanding on what you've built.
Yeah, for sure. And you know what? I'm glad you brought in the people element, right? Because I think, and I'm guilty of this too often we think, okay, downtime, OE, maintenance, right? But what's, Jake really brought this to the forefront this morning. Downtime doesn't matter if you don't have enough people to fix the machine, right? It's irrelevant. And so, I think we should start thinking more about, I've talked to a few executives in the past, and I've heard more and more often the labor force issue, and capturing that, that information, that tribal knowledge, and using technology to mitigate the risk of the great retirement. I think, as technology practitioners, the more we can begin to tie in the human story, whether it's, the future upcoming retirement, or whether it's getting people excited in an organization because it's just people doing things, right? I think that human element becomes critical.
Yeah, I'd agree 100%. Even simple things like it's eliminating a writing down on a clipboard and it's automatically done. That makes people happy because they don't have to do that. I don't know many people who like to write on clipboards. I used to, maybe, but not anymore, right? You kind of get past that. So it's the streamlining of getting rid of the non-value add tasks and steering people to use their brain for high value added tasks.
Right. You could also look at the other end of that too, right? The future state of that, which is, ML and AI is no longer this kind of maybe it'll happen, maybe it won't. It's here, right? Mm-hmm. We're not talking about that. And that as the great retirement's happening, as people are leaving, to lose all that knowledge, as you spoke about it earlier, Mark, that something's going to have to replace that, and we're going to start seeing people implementing ML and AI at that machine level, at least. And it may not be like closed loop lights off, but it's going to be something where, hey, run this machine a little faster, run it a little slower, turn this pressure up, turn it down. Those kinds of things are going to be happening very quickly. I think we're going to see that just start seeing, it'll be normal to see that, not, very soon.
Yeah, I think it's like, how they have those robotic arms that help you lift extra stuff, right? Mm-hmm. I think the same thing's going to happen with data. It'll be like a robotic data piece that will tell you what to do with the machine. So it's kind of like a visual aid, a mechanical aid, not necessarily doing it for you, but just helping you do it better. I think that's the next step coming.
Yeah, I think so too.
I can't wait for my robotic arm. I'll be first in line.
You can borrow mine.
It's funny, Dave, to what you said, end vision, right? One thing that I've learned this morning, and I've changed sort of my outlook. And a year ago, I thought that the end state in manufacturing is lights out, right? The giant cloud in the machine in the cloud is making all the decisions. It is virtually dialing the knobs into the right set points. Nobody's in the factory floor and everything's running on its own. And that's where we're working towards. And I've really changed my thinking today, especially about that as technology being a tool to help empower people and work aside, beside us. And I think to that point, right, it becomes, you see a lot of people out there, a lot of end users, they have analytics teams and they are working, building ML models is not particularly new. Maybe deploying them efficiently is still something we're working over, but having teams that are working through large data sets, this is today's technology, right? This is what everyone's struggling with or working through. And I think really the key battleground here is how quickly can you empower somebody who's not in IT? Let's say a maintenance tech or a tool maker or an operator or even an engineer who's working on, tooling design. How can you empower them to train and deploy a model rapidly without having to know anything about data science, right? That to me is the forefront.
Yeah, I'd agree, because I think what I see, and I've got a couple brothers, right, who are older than me, and when technology shows up in their workplace, they're very anti-tech and they're skeptical of it, and it's usually because I ask them like why don't you want to use this, and they're like, because it doesn't work, and when it doesn't work, I can't do my job. When I can't do my job, I get frustrated. And so it's that exact point. Like, tech is great, and to Dave and to Harry and to me and you, it's more natural, right? It's part of our lives. But to certain people in the workforce, it is not still a thing that's embraced or easily understood, or when it doesn't work, they don't expect that they should have to fix it, right? So there's that seamlessness I think you're talking about. That's really important. That's getting there. But when that happens, I think a lot of people will really start to get into more of that technology assistance.
I think one of the points that was made was manufacturing is unsexy, right? Nobody wants to really dig into it. There's not a lot of fun doing it. It's just grunt work, right? You build this whole massive production line and then you run it and you make a product, then you got to sell it. So I think data is going to really make it cool. And I think I'm really excited about the possibilities of what generative AI is going to bring to time series data, especially at the edge, because we see so many use cases that can be powered by that. So real possibilities there with generative AI. I think it's become public knowledge now, but I think it's been in the works for quite a bit. And I think we're going to start seeing some real use cases come out of that in the near future.
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to be faster, because right now, if you look at ML and AI use cases, like with a chat GPT, it's all over the place. You're asking it to do everything, as opposed to say, go run this machine or go solve this this quality problem, that all of a sudden you can get quicker data, more pointed data, and create pointed solutions to solve those problems. So, to what you're saying, Damien, I think the tools are getting easier. People are understanding it. They're not afraid of it, that you're going to start seeing some acceleration in this space because of the pointed solutions of what we're doing in manufacturing.
Yeah, I think those are tremendous points. I think, about the influx of new technology into manufacturing. When I started in manufacturing as a PLC programmer, one of my biggest disappointments was how legacy the technology of the world's most modern plant kind of felt, right? Like everything was built on surviving, the ruggedized industrial environment. Controls were incredibly expensive, but my phone seemed to have so much more capability than this super expensive control on the plant floor. And I think, one of the unsung powers of Industry 4.0 is a recruiting tool for the next generation.
Yeah.
We talk about, STEM people, everyone wants to do STEM, and manufacturing being, less desirable than being a barista this morning was the comment, right? You want to attract and retain the new talent. Go put in a Litmus and a Cognite and a Nokia, put in the latest tech and say, we are breaking boundaries and manufacturing is exciting again.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just talking about recruiting, I have friends of mine, their kids are starting to college, they want to look at engineering because tech is cool again, and are asking about, you're an engineer, Dave, what do you suggest? And one thing I always tell them is to, go take a data scientist class, right? Put that as maybe your minor, or take a couple classes so you can put it on the resume, because, data science is going to be at the forefront of all this stuff in manufacturing. So be a mechanical engineer, but have the data science class background, because that's going to get that kid a job right away. And it's going to be a valuable piece to it. So I'd agree. Data is now at the forefront of what we're doing in manufacturing.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, excellent. Great conversation, gents. Our time is up at the halftime wrap up. So I will pass it over to the next guest, Vetzal and Andrew. Off to you.
All right, man. I want to thank everybody from the halftime show. What an amazing and exciting recap for the first half of the day. And we're about to keep it going and get it juicy here with this second half. We're going to kick off the second half talking about AI, even more talking about how it's not as scary as it sounds and how we can start integrating this thing, removing some barriers and getting it into the hands of the people that need it now. We talked about some of the processes earlier that AI is going to start helping, and we're going to take a deep dive right now. I'd like to introduce my panelists for today. I will be hosting. My name is Andrew Crow. I am the leader of the New American Manufacturing Renaissance. And with me today, I've got Vatsal Shah, CEO and founder of Litmus. We've got Mr. Simon Floyd, the director of manufacturing for Google Cloud. And we've got Anna-Katrina Shedletsky, CEO and founder of Instrumental. How are you guys today?
Fantastic. Thank you.
I'm excited for this panel. If you guys can't tell, my guests are excited too. Let's hop right into it. What is the actual state of AI in manufacturing?
I'll jump in. So I work in the electronics space. So manufacturing is a big space. That's the first piece. So you got to segment it out. And I primarily work and focus in the electronic space for discrete manufacturing. And the state of AI is that folks are interested. Some companies have some, and they're seeing the benefits of optimization in real time and other kind of amplification of their processes. But I think a lot of folks are still like, we're still in the early adopter phase, I guess. The chasm hasn't yet really been crossed into the kind of early majority pieces. Pieces are going there. And I think people are making the first big steps there. And certainly the first step to any kind of AI adoption is ultimately data. And so that is certainly something that the late majority has already started to incorporate, figure out how they're going to digitize so they can create data sets. But there's definitely AI live on lines right now, making the products that we use and love every day.
So let me ask you a little bit more about that, because you said some interesting things, and we saw some interesting things this morning about the types of processes that people are starting to adapt these things into. So Anna, the people that you do see, we talk about these segments, are there particular industries within manufacturing that you see people are quicker to adapt AI or a little bit less scared to dive in?
I'll say, and then I'd love to hear what the other folks have to say as well. One of the interesting things, so I started Instrumental 8 years ago. So we've seen kind of this interesting kind of adoption wave, and we've had AI since year 2. It was always the plan and always part of the vision of what we were doing. And interestingly enough, the earliest adopters were tech startups, so hardware startups, and then also software companies that build hardware. Those are the earliest adopters. And I think that's because maybe software companies in general have an ethos of yeah, we should use software tools, we should use dev tools, and there's a dearth of dev tools over on the hardware side, or they want to run their hardware organizations more like software. And so that was maybe why, I don't know, that's a guess, but that's something we noticed about the earliest adopters. Though now we, in terms of who's interested, who's working on it, we're even the oldest industries that we might look at and be like, oh, those are going to be the way laggards, are up there now banging on the door wanting AI, inclusive of industries that require intense amounts of regulation like aerospace and defense, which you might think are like gonna be laggard. No, they want these tools for themselves as well. And they have actually more extreme use cases potentially for them with more value than like the tech startup, hardware startup world. What have you seen, Vatsal?
So for me, there are two different sides of things that I'm saying. LLM word, you can't imagine last year hearing from a plant floor. Can you imagine that? No. Like we go in front of some like plant operator and it's like, what is LLM? I'm keep on doing this chat GPT every day at home. I'm keep on using PAD and I'm keep on using these tools. Now their curiosity is, what can I do with it in my plant floor? And in my opinion, that's the biggest factor out there. The awareness in the market is just phenomenal. It's more about the technology is out there. It's proven for like traveling use cases. It's proven for my to-do list use case. Now I love it, but I want to take that in my plant floor right now. And they have ideas going on in their head, which is, oh, what do I do with this here? I keep on making this list here. Why can't my AI can help me with that? So in my opinion, that's a state of the AI, which is ideas are churning right now in people's head on what do they want to do with it. Of course, there is a little bit of a FOMO on executive side. That's just a reality. Everybody wants to do something, but they don't know how. And there is just lack of awareness on how. But
so I love what you just said, because it ties into a lot of what we saw recapped in that halftime report. And it's about enabling workers and removing barriers. So it sounds like is where the FOMO might be at the top at the executive level because they're not hands-on every day. The people that are operators, the people that are doing the hands-on and the physical work, or even like they said, writing in notebooks still and handing the clipboard around, they're looking at it as ways to make their job more effective and more efficient. Is that correct? So it's more of like an organic groundswell where it's coming from the bottom up, right?
Correct, exactly. And Simon, if you want to jump on it, if there is a specific in your opinion.
Yeah, I think that the one way to categorize it is that manufacturers have used this where there are non-value added tasks for a person. And so like the level of automation that you get from AI for doing the really mundane things is just sort of a no-brainer. I think most people have realized that this is a great way to introduce AI into the factory. Give you an example of that. Sort of outside core operations would be sort of manufacturing, planning or scheduling, and in the forecasting phase. And doing a traditional method, you really only get sort of visibility as to what happened last year, and then you sort of have a correction for what you believe is going to happen this year. But using a more kind of sort of data-centric approach, more real-time approach, you can get what is going to be the actual within a really close level of precision that would outperform your simple forecast that you created based on the previous year. Things like that, I feel, is where manufacturers are focusing because it's extremely practical and it provides them with level of automation or sort of a response time that simply too difficult for a person to do or is kind of non-value added compared to something else. So, definitely core operations, I think I'd agree. See a lot of computer vision being used because that one is very easy for people to understand how that works. So we get a lot of computer vision workloads, makes a lot of sense. Definitely predictive maintenance. I would have said 5 years ago, no one is really doing it. Now I'd say kind of everybody is doing it in some way, or definitely something that's very akin to that. Maybe it's anomaly detection or one of these kind of workloads. And generally, I'm actually very bullish about what manufacturers are doing. I think that they're sort of finally on the right path. I hate to say finally, but there was a time when there was a lot of evangelism from the big tech companies and not a lot of response. And now I think it's around the other way. I think that they're almost asking for what else can I be doing with a foundation that I've already built, or maybe I've got several different types of foundations. I'm trying to work out how to get the best out of each of them in my operations, or even more broadly, I'm thinking about supply chain or field service or these other areas.
Well, that's a fantastic segue into our next question. So there are a lot of manufacturers now that are most likely watching us right now, and they have the need. They know that AI is here. They know that Industry 4.0 is here. They know IoT is here. And they're like, okay, I know this is the thing that's going to help me open up my margins. I know this is most likely the thing that's going to help me attract the screenagers that have integrated all type of technology into their lives and want to see it at their jobs as well. I'm going to attract talent this way. But where do I get started? There's AI everything. There's so much information out there. There are so many different companies that are entering this space now. What do I do? How do manufacturers get started now?
I'd start.
Oh, sorry. Go on. You go ahead.
I was just gonna say I'd start by defining a business problem. You won't be successful if you're just trying to like sprinkle AI pixie dust on your operations. You're not gonna get value that way. Like look for opportunities of inefficiency or have a metric that you want to push and move, and then be looking for opportunities to have that kind of business performance. So for example, our customers, one of the core applications of Instrumental is actually in the new product development process of new products. And so for example, time to market is absolutely critical in the high volume consumer electronics space because it's such a competitive market. You see that in the last week where the Quest Pro 3 was like announced right before the Vision Pro, because like, you know, everybody's racing to get their technology out into the world. So time to market is the metric that those customers want to move. And they're looking for opportunities where AI could accelerate their time to market. And so Instrumental for them might accelerate their FA failure analysis process, and being able to do faster, or issue discovery and anomaly detection to do that faster. So now they can essentially move everything in their schedule to the left. So if I was a manufacturer, I would think about what is the core metric that matters to me? Is it time to market? Is it throughput? Is it margin? Where are your biggest margin hitters? And there's probably a company out there working on the particular piece that's driving that metric. As a secondary piece, another good virtuous workplace to start, if you're not exactly sure yet, is just start getting your data in a useful, organized way. In one place, whether that's in an S3 bucket of your AWS or in Google Cloud or whatnot, or your own servers, get it in one place, get it organized, so that you can then layer AI on top of that. And there'll be lots of companies you can work with to kind of bring in modular pieces of AI on top of your database. There are certainly companies you can work with that like do turnkey, so you don't have to do that part. But if you're not sure where to start, starting there is a virtuous place.
Yeah, Simon, go ahead. I have some points.
Andrew, do you mind if I just jump in quickly? I just caught something there. I just want to make sure I got it right. Did you call the new generation a screen timer? Is that what you called them?
They're
Screenagers.
Screenager. I've not heard this one before.
And my thinking
really
behind that,
all of a sudden.
my thinking behind that is, you know, I'm huge on workforce, and we've got this problem. We don't know how to put people in front of these machines, and technology is the answer, right? These kids, the screenager generation and under are the first generation that have had and integrated into all parts of their lives. You know, Gen X, millennials like myself, we adopted it, but these people have integrated. They're a whole nother type of human / AI, and they're the experts. They've been having it since they came out of the womb. So these are the screenagers in my book.
So I have an idea for that generation actually. So one of the things that I find is sort of blocking a little bit of the adoption in manufacturing is, one, not enough data science skills to go around for sure. And I would say that what that generation knows about DevOps, they need to know about MLOps. And that's really a really big focus area, because a lot of these workloads, like even a computer vision workload as an example, it's not that great unless you use it as a dynamic tool that you can retrain. Otherwise, go buy a fixed machine, basically, yeah? So just go back to the old days. You can't get there unless you understand MLOps, which means you've got to have really good collaboration between an IT group, between your OT group, and you've probably got to have practice in ML, basically, to get it to where you need to be. At least that's what we're seeing. Pre-training helps people from an adoption point of view, but then sustainment becomes the issue. And so for screenagers, new term I've just learned, I would say getting into MLOps, it's almost, I'd say like fail-safe as a career option in manufacturing. I think it's one of those things that's just really going to be needed. And even if your pivot is going to be, more in kind of like the commerce space, or maybe the pivot's going to be in supply chain as an example, or any of those that will be needed, because the insights that you can gather by just having some insights into what could occur with a degree of probability is really important for a manufacturer, I feel. That is the sort of thing that will power in a sort of advanced decision that you can make versus just being responsive. So I think that there's actually a lot there for the newer generation, even actually kind of existing, people that are in the role at the moment, is to kind of head in this direction. I think will open a big world of possibilities for sure.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly comment on like how can they get started in our opinion. So like what we are saying is 100% right, as what Anna was saying earlier, which is you have to define the use case. You have to define what KPIs can be addressed by using like a specific model or specific Gen AI type of approaches. Might be chat interfaces that you might create, or it might be just a domain specific model which is trained by you for your company itself. But you do have to define a use case before you spend your resources on it. And once those use cases are defined, it's not going to be slam dunk. It's not like you go ahead and okay, all your business problems, they are solved. You can go ahead and let go of your whole management team because AI is going to take over. No, it's more or less, once it's defined, that there is a consistent investment required in designing and redesigning and fine tuning it up to a point that it solves a specific business problem in a very well defined way. A supply chain, for example, it keeps on coming back to us because supply chain visibility has so much granular time series data set available for them. Like anywhere from shipment or anywhere from receiver, anywhere from like a spillage that they had, like they have a whole lot of data available. Then one person cannot analyze all of that data to make some conclusion out of it. So can you give it to some AI reasoning, or can you give it to some AI that is going to figure out how to deal with it? So yes, yes, it will help. Like sometimes like human mind is let's say it cannot do that multimodal analysis, and AI might be able to help us do that. It's more augmentation.
Well, I love what you just said. So to echo a point that you made earlier and that Anna made as well, specific use cases, right? And if we go further back until we talked about the people that are adapting these things and how this is getting adopted at the shop floor, if you don't know your specific use case, get your data. And where do you get your data from? Your workers on the shop floor. If you can't put your finger on it, I think it's very valuable that you make a way for your shop floor workers to say, how can this help you? Or let them chime in. And that transparency will start to open up maybe some of those use cases that you can immediately do this. Another thing, we talked about the fear from the older generation. I think it was Mark Decker in the halftime report that talked about how certain people in the shop saw technology and data as a good thing and they leaned towards it. And then there was another generation in the shop that said, I don't like it. It's going to make my job harder because I have to learn this, right? And people are fearful of losing their jobs. But Vacho, you just made a very important point that just applying AI to certain processes does not mean that everybody goes home now, right? Now there's a new job. There's a new job of maintaining these processes. There's a new job that was created of interpreting this data and then making it more efficient and going back to that process. And it's a constant, living, breathing thing that you continue to work on, right? Back to the logistics things. It's going to help us bid jobs better, right? If we can tell when materials coming in or when materials leaving, we can tell when an end mill or certain tools are going to break down or where they're going to wear out. When we run a certain amount of these, we can order better and more efficiently. So we got to think about, all of the processes and think outside of the box of how these things are going to help us. Are there any things that you all find? Simon said a great one earlier, tailoring the youth to certain fields and studying certain niches within it. But what are you guys seeing that's going to accelerate this change and get us here quicker?
I just comment on it again. It's more like a pull right now rather than push. There is just like if you look at like the let's say fresh off university students that we will see, they are far better in specific prompting tasks than any skilled AI developer we might hire. Just because they are more tuned towards it, they are more aware about it, they can bring that experience into professional world rather easily. They know how to talk to the system, they know how to deal with it, they know how, like what latest LLM model was launched yesterday. Just out of curiosity, they were doing it. Now, if there is a way that they can bring that to professional environment, if we foster it, there is more like a pool that they are going to do rather than educate the whole generation. This is my opinion. Like, let's say, much larger companies, like including Google or other companies out there, they are already educating the mass market right now. It's just when they join the professional world, they have certain mindset that they are going to utilize here as well.
Yeah, maybe I'll jump in. I think what's holding anyone back, maybe I'll go with this, not the lack of understanding use case. I've yet to meet a manufacturer that said, okay, can you help us work out what our use cases are? I have them say, help us work out priority, which I understand, because there's like a technical feasibility component to that, isn't there? There's like what the business needs, and then there's my ability to execute. So it's wise to have that conversation with a tech provider. I actually think what it comes down to at the end of the day is, and actually I think Anna, you said this before, the data itself in most manufacturers is nowhere near ready to do any of the things that they would like to be able to do at scale. I'll kind of preface it that way. So all the people that have gone out and tried Bard or ChatGPT or anything else like that, super excited, they see the use case, so they want to go do it, and then realize that they've got zero ability to execute because the data is a disaster, basically. Might as well just say it that way. So, one of the things that we've been working on is creating like ontologies for manufacturing. We felt was really critical because a lot of the early business intelligence work they did, or even a lot of the AI work they did, ended up being siloed against the data that they had that was available to them, nowhere near the scale that they need horizontally. And so getting back to something as boring as having a manufacturing ontology, something that everybody can get behind, understand it, train it, sustain it, is like absolutely critical for what we need to do in order to move forward. And I know that makes it really hard on a lot of manufacturers because they're like, oh, here we go again, data. I bought this system in, like 1994, and then I bought this other system in like 2011, and then I tried to upgrade and do this and do that, and then someone came along with something better and I implemented that. Now you've got all this data all over the place, all of it relevant and valuable, but bringing it together becomes the extremely difficult part. And we've worked on all these different ways to try and help people get there, not because we want to be in kind of the data cleansing normalization business, because we want to be in the AI business. In order to get there, you've got to have the data. It's like so all roads lead back to that one center of gravity. And so I think it's maybe like a primary objective for a lot of companies at the moment is to work out what is the data estate strategy going forward. And those use cases on top can be prioritized according to their ability to build that data estate. That's sort of my feeling at the moment anyway.
Yeah,
I would even add on to that. That's a very valid point and something we've certainly seen as well. And one of the challenging bits is like, well, step one is to get your data like under control and not a disaster, to your point, or aggregated together in a place where you can use it. That's like often the least valuable part in terms of like an ROI analysis, because it's really hard to say, like, just because I already had this data in 4 places, putting it in one place, what's the ROI of that? And that's kind of this narrow-minded view of just looking at the near term versus like once it's in one place, then you can start doing all of these other pieces. And so it's like that first step is the hardest because it takes a lot of work, like lots of effort, but also and cost, but it's also like the lowest ROI step. And so that can be really difficult, I think, for many manufacturers to look at as a step. And instead, I think you have to look at the whole thing as a step. Like it's not, yeah, there's these broken down pieces, but you have to look at the ROI arc of the whole enchilada and not just like the one piece. And so this is where I think to your point, what accelerates this, I think it's in-depth value engineering across like thinking about it beyond just the first step of getting the data together, but okay, what is the next thing that you can do with that data? What's the ROI of that? What's the next thing you can do for that? What's the ROI of that? And thinking about the ROI more holistically than just like defects caught, line downtime eliminated, et cetera, but also thinking about, ESG and being able to hire people. And there's like all of these other kind of elements, the efficiency of your workforce and where they're spending their time. Everybody right now is trying to get lean, mean teams because it's like, there's pressure in the market. And so how can you do more with the team that you have? There's a lot of different kind of buckets in the ROI. And so our particular take on it is the value engineering piece, and vendors who can value engineer for their customers where they'll see this ROI will be the vendors that ultimately win in the battle, not necessarily perhaps like the technology that's available.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. And that's exactly in earlier today in the keynote, we were also discussing the same thing. In last 3 years, we are seeing like exponential growth on amount of companies looking for this data. At first, it was more like, I want to clean up my historians. Afterwards, the value engineering really shifted towards, I want to do my new business intelligence in the cloud. And then it became, I want to do data warehousing for the future. AI was not even, nobody was talking about it yet. But these companies, they started doing more and more with the data in the cloud, in the centralized environment, for one or another purposes. Now, a big accelerant that we are seeing is like this year, there will be like threefold amount of sites deployed itself. And half of them, they are talking that they're going to use raw data plus synthetic data to do some analysis with machine learning and AI in the future. So yes, that's a huge accelerant, and I think customers have started realizing it.
So we've talked about a lot of opportunities. We talked about how to get in. We talked about how to build that foundation. We talked about different ROIs that, this data collection can give you. Let's talk about some of the pitfalls that manufacturers need to look out for, maybe can, avoid. What are some of the things that you guys have seen or that you can predict that may happen? Some of the negative things.
I can dive in again. So one that comes to mind is we're talking about fundamentally new technology here. And as a result, like some of the most innovative players are small. And that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing. And I think some of the pitfalls for large enterprises, like, well, I want to buy something from IBM, Siemens, like the big brand name that's safer, but potentially stagnant. Like we can look at it from the perspective of what happened a decade ago with Industry 4.0, GE predicts like this is the future. And then like it just fell flat because there wasn't actually a ton of innovation there. It didn't fulfill the business promise that was out in the market, but we all still talk about Industry 4.0. So the marketing persists. And so I think one of the pitfalls can be kind of over indexing on like go with the safe choice versus go with the technology and the innovative team. And I think a lot of these large enterprises are actually partnering with startups like Instrumental. We partner with Siemens, for example, because there's an opportunity to really bring this kind of technology into large enterprise and kind of existing infrastructure that lots of these large companies that sell into this market and have been here for many decades to do. But in general, it's harder for those very large companies to really innovate and to be committed to that innovation over the next decade. Tons of stuff's going to happen over the next decade. When you pick your partner, are you going to pick a stagnant product, or should you pick a product that they're going to be releasing new AI cutting edge stuff every quarter? So that's a pitfall that I would advise people to think carefully about. Nobody gets fired for buying IBM.
They
Maybe
do now.
IBM's not your choice.
Yeah, I would just add a little bit different angle towards this. There is a lot of fast moving innovation in the consumer world, right? And businesses and enterprises, the pitfall to avoid is you cannot expect the exact same results inside the business and enterprise world without putting efforts behind it. Like everybody's like, somebody asked me last week, okay, so can I just take this publicly available API and connect to my ERP system? It's gonna start communicate with each other. Again, I was like, first of all, don't do that. Like there needs to be general awareness about privacy. There needs to be general awareness about expectations out of it. that it's not going to be like, it's not going to make you launch rockets at like within a week. This is not built for it. It's trained on the data set, which is public knowledge. It's trained on the data set, which is synthetic data that they created out of that public knowledge. So are you going to run your business by using that synthetic data, which is publicly available, or you want something which is very much tuned towards your own business? So those consumer technologies that are out there, do not expect them to give, for B2B world, they are not going to give the exact same result, not at an instance. It's going to take a long time. It's a journey for next a year to 3 years for your consistent investment. And much more modern B2B ready products they are launching with like frozen models that we are seeing and other things. But that will be the pitfall to avoid. Set your expectations right and protect your data.
Yeah, actually, I definitely agree with this. It's very common actually to hear, oh, I actually heard this from a CEO. It was a great one. My daughter showed me something that I could do and programmed it really quickly, wrote a small app, and it's groundbreaking. I want to bring that to my business, not even just a manufacturing operation. I want to bring it to the business.
Yeah.
And now the fallacy there is that was done really quickly because you can, in a consumer context, you can do it really quickly. But then you've got to break it down a little bit. So what about security? What about privacy? How are you going to sustain it over time? There's all these things that then it doesn't seem like it was so easy to create a prototype for the enterprise because they're the real things that you actually have to have. And you can't use a public model and expect to retain your confidentiality or intellectual property. You can't do that. And little things like that, I think, are tricky for people to understand how they're going to operationalize what they've just seen. But it's a great prototype environment. It's a really good way to see use case. And that's what we always advocate, that if you can see it there, you should do it 100%. And then learn from that and bring that as a pattern. But then we will have to consider what it takes to get into the enterprise, which kind of brings my other point about a pitfall, the one that we see really commonly. Really big difference still in objectives between the IT organization that wants to simplify the amount of apps that they have to manage, that wants to have consolidation because of spend. All these are good things. They concern themselves about security, geolocation, compliance. I could keep going. All of that stuff they really do. And then you've got OT that wants to get on with it because they've got cost controls that they have to worry about. They've got staffing issues that they need to overcome. They've got real things going on in the factory. And quite often, the two don't always come together as a single strategy in the organization. So the big pitfall I always say is not thinking about a single strategy for information technology, whether it's in ops or whether it sits in the enterprise. Not having that is the single biggest risk I see for manufacturers. It's thinking about them separately because they exist on two different books in the business, which, okay, sure, but it doesn't mean that you can't have a single strategy that incorporates all those people because you need one. And so not having that, I think, is the biggest difficulty at the moment for many manufacturers.
Yeah, makes 100% sense.
Is there anything we can do in the industry as manufacturers to begin to start to take some of that mystique away from it? Because we talked about it a couple of times earlier. I think Anna or Vacho said it. You can't just sprinkle this on, right? This isn't something that, you can just apply the Band-Aid and then it's working. This isn't something, the same application as what his daughter did that you just talked about, Simon. So what can we begin to do as an industry to remove that veil of magic mystique and be more real about and realistic about how we apply these things, how they work in our own business, and how we continue to work on it and what to expect?
I would start on this one. So yes, so like the journey is not well defined yet. The technology is at its infancy right now. This is my opinion. There are products, platforms out there like Instrumental who are generating revenue, like a ROI driven project, which is very much AI and ML. But if you are starting your journey, which is, here is my data and I'm going to do everything right now, give me the exact path that I should be following, that doesn't exist yet. This is my opinion, where there is a learning to be done, as well as there is some standards, some workflows, some architectures still has to be defined for it to be more scalable, for it to be more cost efficient, for it to scale with privacy concerns in place. All of those things we are yet to see. Companies, they are rushing towards it, but once again, there are things to make sure and learn on the job rather than having all the answers upfront. It's just my opinion.
I would say that our experience has been actually that the prospective and prospects and customers are actually incredibly savvy and are not like thinking, sprinkle the 5 years ago, it was sprinkle the pixie dust on, do magic kind of stuff. And now I think actually they're incredibly savvy around asking really like good questions about how it's going to benefit their business, the metrics, the performance related metrics. So I think there is like a lot of like a good bastion of understanding within the customer base and manufacturers, brands who are building. They may not have adopted yet or successfully adopted, but they're savvy and they're out there asking great questions. And so I would just say to keep doing that, keep probing in onto these technologies, make sure they're going to really provide the value. And I think I've been doing a really strong job, even in industries where there's really not a lot on offer for them, like potentially in like the aerospace and defense industry, as an example. There's not a lot on offer there because I think many companies will start working in non-regulated spaces first versus starting in a regulated space. It's like very hard. So they have even fewer options, and they're just like chomping at the door, waiting for, for companies to step through and become regulatorily compliant, so that they can leverage the tools and understand them. And but they have the same savvy questions about performance and how it will really impact their business and their business metrics.
Yeah, but my argument, or let's say my curiosity behind it would be those savvy one. Are they mid-market or are they enterprises?
Both. In our experience.
And are they really looking for a specific solutions which is repeatable, or are they all paving path on their own?
They are generally paving their own paths. To your point around like there isn't like a to use kind of, I guess, insider lingo around like what is the buyer's journey for going through this transformation. I agree with you. I don't think there's a clear roadmap that like someone takes off a shelf, which is why many of these organizations have hired like, digital transformation officers to go try to actually plot the roadmap and figure out what the various steps should be for that organization based on the priorities. To Simon's point, getting that unified strategy, it can be a challenge. And so, yeah, I do think that there's pretty good understanding of where and how, and kind of looking for the right pieces to plug in. But totally agree with you that there's not like, you can't go on a website and just like download like step 1, do this, step 2, do this, step 3, do this.
Exactly. Yeah, makes 100% sense.
Maybe GPT can do that for you. It's really great. I hear it's really great at making to-do lists and breaking things down into steps.
Yeah. Show us how to run a business, right? Simon, your comment.
This actually brings you up to like a really interesting point about, some time ago it was definitely kind of just like sprinkle a little bit of it over here and there and get something out of it. I think now in a more modern context, I actually hear this. I hear executives saying, my board of directors is expecting me to take advantage of this new AI wave. And like, what's it called? And so we'll say, well, it's called generative AI. We're going to generate something from the content you already have, whatever that might be. It could be conversational, it could be documents, could be a number of different things. I think then there's a little bit of a pause, which is, okay, so I know I need to have this because I want to show that I'm modern and that I can kind of move in the direction. But really, the reason why I want it is I'm trying to improve my operations and get some type of competitive advantage. I want to do something with it that someone else can't in some way, if I can, which kind of comes down to a few things that we've been talking about today. What is that use case? You know it, but now you have to identify the best way to apply the technology. There's people there to help you. That's definitely one thing. The other is, I always say, just bring it back to the people. If it's not actually helping people at the end of the day, then don't do it. And don't think, and don't have that mindset of, I need to replace someone. only replace a person that has the worst non-value added job of all time that's probably demoralizing for the whole $11 an hour you pay them. Find them something much more valuable to go do and put a computer on that task every day of the week. But all the other ones make it help people in the right way. And I think that's where all of this technology that we're seeing come forward with generative AI is great, because it can summarize documents for you. It can tell you how many steps they are, and then you can have a conversation with the right context about what to do. All of these things are really good at helping people. And so bring it back to there, I think, is another sort of like great way for many companies to think about how they're going to take advantage of this new technology that we have and make it really work in their business, that it becomes, I love this word, sustainable. It's not just, I'm going to do it here and now to kind of, because my board of directors or my investors or whatever have said, gee, you really need to have this. But really, I'm going to make it part of the fabric of the business, because it really is going to help sort of go forward.
Wow, that was fantastic. I'm glad Simon went last because he dropped some bars. If you start with the people, the profit will come. You can make jobs better. You can enable people to move up and skill them up through data, through AI at your plant right now. That was amazing. This has been a great conversation, everybody. We've got about 5 minutes left, so let's wrap it up with any last thoughts. Anna, you've been kicking it off, so I'm going to start with you.
I mean, this is a great conversation. It was great to talk about AI in manufacturing, and that it's here and that you can go get it and you can buy some right now if you want. But there's some steps you might want to do first. And certainly there's a lot of folks out there who are happy to walk you through what those steps could be. And so just ask those savvy questions that you're already asking. Yeah, I think that's my takeaway.
I'll give my my point of view. The technology is right there, exactly as I told. You can just buy it right now. It's $20 a month. Go ahead and go get started with something. The idea is do all of those things, but try to define a specific use case, specific journey that you would like your business to achieve by using this technology, and ask those savvy questions as well. That can this technology solve this specific repeatable automatic and robotic problem for me? Can it? If the answer is yes, by all means, go ahead and adopt that technology right now. It's that easy and it's available. At Litmus, we are enabling hundreds of large companies or enterprises to do more with data. Again, the idea is we are bringing this raw data, derived data, more synthetic data into the cloud environment that they are training or they are utilizing it. One of the pitfall, or one of the things that I would definitely suggest is, when you are training those elements, when you are training those machine learning models or AI models itself, have some general awareness about the privacy policies and data security itself, that those tools they are providing you. And the security around your data set is extremely critical. So work with a partner who gives you confidence on your data is secure, and it will be secure forever. It won't be trained to sell your recipe to somebody else. So yes, two side of things. Yes, go ahead and do it right now, but be generally aware about privacy and security of the data itself.
Yeah, I'll just sort of make a couple of comments. I think that, first of all, I really appreciate these sort of opportunities, because for me, this is not a discussion just about AI, or it's not a discussion about building a better data foundation or anything else like that. What we're doing is having a conversation about industry advancement. And I think that everybody here, and especially for me, is committed to that. And that's why we're doing it at the end of the day. If another technology comes along that's better, we're going to get behind it 100%, because the objective is, how do you move manufacturing forward? And I'll just give you a short anecdote. I was invited to this conversation about Industry 5.0. I have to tell you, I was like, what is that? I was like, I don't even think we've done 4.0 correctly yet. Now, apparently, we're going to do 5.0. But what I liked in the spirit of that was, let's focus on what's going to be next and try to create a North Star, or something that we can go after and not forget about that. Because I know in manufacturing, it's really easy to get stuck on, I need to get X more hours of productivity out of the day when I don't have another shift that I can incorporate. As an example, I don't have enough people, or I can't buy another robot, or whatever it is. It can get, so tactical, you can sometimes forget about the direction that you need to take in order to get the advancement. And so these forums, fabulous. I love to do them because we get to have this conversation, and I certainly hope that others find it, maybe even inspiring, or at least, brings it back to top of mind that at the end of the day, we kind of have to have that future direction in order to move this industry forward. So I just want to say thanks again. It was really great to.
I want to thank all of our panelists for joining us today. I want to thank all of you all for joining us as well. I'm sure we could go on for another hour and keep diving into data, but we boil it all down to this. The data is here, AI is here, it's time to use it. It only gets better if we use it and we keep asking the right questions. The more we dive in, the better it gets and the further along we are. So maybe one day we will be to the point where you can just sprinkle it and manufacturing does the rest. But we love the fact that you guys joined us today. Thank you. We'll be having some breakout sessions and an actual 15-minute break right now. So don't leave. Stay tuned. Take a bathroom break, get a drink of water, and join us back here in 15 minutes.
Thanks a lot, Andrew. Thanks, Anna. Thanks, everyone.